Let's come back from the lunch break, please. It's 1 p.m. on day 9 of the hearing in WQCC 23-84. These are proposed rules relating to water reuse. My name is Felicia Orth, hearing officer appointed by the commission to conduct the hearing. This is our second public comment session of the day. The next public comment session will be at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Just a few things about public comment. One, we can invite folks to go just once, so please collect your thoughts. We have to limit comment to 3 minutes. If you have more to say, we're happy to have it included in the record. We would just ask you to write it in an email to Pam Jones, who's behind me. I will ask you to spell your first and last name for the transcript, and I will ask you to swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, because the commission rules call for everyone to make that statement. So I have a number of names here. Lou Bays Guerra.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry. Hold on just 1 second. I forgot to ask Ms. O'Grady to make her statement. The entirety of the hearing is being captured by our court reporter, Teresa, and also by a team of interpreters interpreting between Spanish and English.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. For anybody who is appearing on WebEx and would like to access the Spanish channel, all you'll need to do is go to the bottom of the screen and there's a globe. Click on the globe and choose Spanish. Si hay alguien que está participando vía WebEx y quisiera acceder a los canales de español, nada más tiene que buscar el globo que está al pie de su pantalla y ahí puede seleccionar español. If there's any, if anyone would like to make their public comment in Spanish, we would appreciate you letting us know. And if you have your comment written, we would like to have that beforehand as well. Si hay alguien que quisiera dar o hacer su comentario público en español, les pedimos con mucho respeto que nos avisen y que nos proporcionen su comentario por escrito si es que lo tengan, y así nos podemos interpretarlo. Gracias.
Thank you. Let's see, Ms. Guerra, would you please spell your name for the transcript?
Yes, it's L-U, B as in boy, A as in apple, E as in Edward, Z as in zebra, G as in giraffe, U as in umbrella, E as in elephant, R as in rover, R as in rover, A as in apple, and it's pronounced Lu Baez Guerra.
Thank you very much. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Shikande yeche, koshed yen bikan and ye. I am speaking Navajo. I am saying, help me speak for my ancestors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak here today. My great-great-grandmother and great-great-grandfather were native to the land currently called New Mexico. Apache and Navajo, they were stolen from their tribes as children and placed in settler homes as servants, only allowed to leave those homes after converting to Catholicism and marrying each other. I speak on their behalf, their daughter's behalf, her son's behalf, and his daughter's behalf. I speak on behalf of all my ancestors who are not able to speak for themselves today. We ask, with your great responsibility, that you make all of your choices with all the lives, health, and happiness of New Mexicans in your heart. Deny this proposed rule. We need a rule, but not this rule. The Commission should instead approve a clear rule that states no person shall discharge, dispose of, or reuse treated or untreated produced water off of the oil field. The department shall deny certification of any federal permit proposing to discharge, dispose of, or reuse treated or untreated produced water off of the oil field. Produced water is toxic, radioactive, and possesses serious risks to public health and the environment. This is not just an experiment with the water, it's an experiment with our health. This rule is not just a no discharge rule, it's also a produced water reuse rule, and it authorizes reuse with no science-based evidence or credible standards to ensure safety. This rule as written will lead to contamination through accidents, spills, and waste generation. Workers at treatment plants are especially vulnerable. Water is life. It impacts human life, wildlife, and plant life, our farms and our foods. Our Mother Earth will always heal herself. The question is, will we heal ourselves? Without clean water, we do not live. New Mexico and all of its inhabitants must live. Once our water is contaminated, there is no going back. This land has been here before all of us, and it will be here long after we are all gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guerra. Carolyn Houses?
Was that?
Yes, I see that you're on the platform. If you would please
Okay.
spell your first and last name for the transcript.
All right. My name is Carolyn Houses. First name spelled Karilyn. Hauzous.
Thank you. Do you
Okay.
swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
All right. To introduce myself, my name's Carolyn Houses. I'm of the Navajo and Taos Pueblo. I have lived on the Navajo reservation. I grew up on there. I also lived in Taos Pueblo. I currently live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. For my Navajo relatives that may be listening, I'm of the Salt Clan and born for Kowatni, which is another word for Taos Pueblo. Many years ago, I'd say about 5 to 8 years ago, we went on a tour, a group of us went on a tour to the fracking wells near Counselor, New Mexico with Mr. Daniel So. I frequently traveled that Highway 550 and I'd see a few of the fracking wells to the left and right of me. But once we traveled on this trip, this tour, to the west side of the road, I was astounded by the many wells that I could see interspersed with the people that were living there. The first thing that immediately struck me was the fumes, and they made me nauseated. I was told about the possible, the detriment that it was causing to our environment and our health. We even saw a pond. I don't know if it was just a watering hole or maybe one of the, but anyway, it was contaminated by the fracking process. I also saw how close a fracking structure was near to a home, and it was reported in the newspaper that there was an explosion. And so that also shows the dangers of fracking. Also, it is a danger and it is an offense to do that fracking so near our sacred sites of Chaco Canyon, as well as other sacred sites held dear and special to the Navajo and the Pueblo people. So I want to end that part there and just talking about the water, fracking wastewater reuse that we're talking about today. First of all, I use that term instead of produce water, because when I think about produce water, I think about the creation of water, H2O. But that is not what we're talking about. we're talking about fracking wastewater reuse, which is H2O plus whatever chemicals that we don't know about, toxic chemicals, forever chemicals, plus the water, plus salt that is used in this fracking process.
Ms. Houses, please wrap up.
Okay, so basically, now that went fast, sorry. But basically, I support the petitions sent forward to you all today. And please do what you can to follow the standards, to involve the scientific community and the public in this process. It is very important for our health, our future, and consideration of 7 generations ahead of us. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Ms. Houses. Melissa Homan. Melissa Homan. She is on the plan. Ms. Homan, can you hear me?
There. Yeah. So I just was hitting the microphone, but it just finally acknowledged.
All right. Would you spell your first and last name, please?
My name is Melissa Homan, Melissahommann.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I swear.
All right. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I'm sorry, but I get very emotional. I fell in love with New Mexico in the early 1970s. I retired here in the fall of 2014. There is no question that so-called treated produced fracking water is still chemically laced with toxic poisons such as arsenic, mercury, benzene, radioactive isotopes, just to name a few. I can't imagine how in your right mind you would allow this proposed rule to have poison water not to be scientifically regulated and then to be reused for agriculture, irrigation, portable water, aquifer, recharge, and environmental restoration. Beyond me that you would allow this rule. We need credible standards to ensure safety, to protect public health and the environment, and not recklessly dumped. I retired here to the stunning land of enchantment, not to be poisoned. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Homan. Barbara Weisoff. Ms. Weisoff?
There I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. Would you
Um,
spell your name for the record, please?
my first name Barbara, Barbara, last name Wissoff, Wisoff.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
I will start your 3 minutes.
My name is Barbara Wissoff, and I am a low fixed income senior living alone in Albuquerque. My 2 beloved toddler-aged grandchildren, my son and daughter-in-law, and other family members also live in Albuquerque. I want my family and all people to have a healthy present and a healthy future. The radioactive waste from fracking is unsafe for workers, our water, and our air. There is no science supporting that fracking waste in the Permian Basin is any different from fracking waste in Pennsylvania and Virginia. Rebutting Justin Noble's research and facts in defense of the oil and gas industries, despite the known untreatable toxicity of fracking waste, speaks to the Commission's allegiance to oil and gas industries. The current pilot projects in the water reuse rule are in violation of the law because there is no permitting requirement. The Water Quality Commission is obligated to protect water quality for human beings and the environment. Business owners and investors in the oil and gas industries have a conflict of interest deliberating and ruling on the water reuse rule. The term produced water is deceptive and it's gaslighting. Produced water can contain toxic levels of salt, elevated levels of lead and arsenic, and dangerous amounts of the radioactive element radium and its daughters. Treating it has been shown to concentrate these poisons, not get rid of them. In what way is it acceptable to consider reusing fracking's toxic waste and expose more people to harm? I'm vehemently against using fracking's radioactive toxic waste off-site because it is untreatable. Even pilot projects on the oil field have failed, and treatment plants have failed and closed. There is no reason other than profiteering at the expense of the population to build another treatment plant or allow a pilot project. Persons who need work will take jobs at proposed treatment sites, and they and their families will get sick and might die. Read Justin Noble's book, Petroleum 238. Our governor shouldn't propose further enabling corporations and related labs and industries to profit from abusing the population. Apparently, some of New Mexico's laws were made to benefit oil and gas companies while harming the legislators' and rulemakers' constituents. These industries are poorly regulated. Their incessant appeals to avoid complying with existing regulations are on record. There is no reason to think the fracking companies would comply with any regulations now or in the future. The royalties New Mexico receives from oil and gas are paltry compared with the company's profits in the billions. I'm done. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Wessoff. Cheryl Gardopi. Who's here on the platform? All right. Gracie Aragon.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly. Thank you. Would you spell your names for the record, please?
Yeah, so it's GRACIE ARAGON.
All right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes,
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
thank you. Good afternoon, Commission members. My name is Gracie Aragon. I am from the Pueblo of Acoma, and I am giving a statement on behalf of my organization, Pueblo Action Alliance, to oppose treated produced water being discharged into ground and surface water. Our organization started in 2016 during the No DAPL movement, an attempt to sacrifice our northern relatives' water. Our organization fights to protect cultural sustainability and community defense by addressing environmental and social impacts in Indigenous communities. PAA is a matriarch-led organization in which our roles to protect Mother Earth are complementary to our roles as water carriers in our communities. PAA is the founder of the New Mexico No Fault Solutions Coalition and has been fighting against the promotion of a hydrogen economy in New Mexico. The governor's strategic water supply plan and the proposed water reuse regulations would continue this legacy of false solutions for New Mexico, as this concept, under the guise of, quote, new water supplies, would tragically recycle, reuse, and resell produced water, which is toxic wastewater from oil and gas extraction, for energy development and, quote, augment the supply of fresh water for communities, farms, aquatic ecosystems, and interstate compact compliance. Yet, it is important to understand the environmental and public health risks that come with the reuse of produced water. There is not enough scientific evidence showing that produced water can be treated or is up to par with the state's water quality standards. Fundamental to our organization is advocating for the protection, reclamation, and rematriation of our water resources. Therefore, we have serious concerns about produced water plants that will impact our communities, health, fields, and livestock. For generations, our communities have been exposed to these extractive and experimental practices, where that oil and gas wastewater
Ms.
can contain
Aragon?
carcinogens like benzene, to which there is no safe level of exposure. Yes,
Ms. Aragon?
yes.
We lose a few words occasionally. We've heard about 99% of it. We've lost a few words. If you would just finish a little more slowly, and
Okay.
if you have your statement in writing, it would be great if you would email it to Pam Jones.
Okay. So just continue.
Please.
Okay. Exposure to benzene can cause cancer and other diseases, harm bone marrow, and damage your immune system. Acoma, with no running water or electricity atop the mesa, has utilized and still utilizes centuries-old water systems to sustain our traditional lifeways. Below the mesa, we protect the water runoff from the Zuni Mountains, better known as the Rio San Jose, to be able to continue and pass down our traditional agricultural practices to the next generation of Acoma farmers and ranchers. Spring, summer rain, and melting Mount Taylor snowpack provide the remaining water supply to my community. I am therefore deeply concerned as the strategic water supply plan is a direct threat and disruption to our natural network of water. Are we going to continue the legacy of experimentation and use our sacred lands and waters as testing sites? Are we able to give full faith that the private public sector is going to drive solutions for New Mexico? This role is in misalignment with the vision we have for our community. This commission, the governor, and the New Mexico Environment Department to properly consult with all sovereign tribal nations in New Mexico and call off all plans to discharge treated produced water into our precious waterways. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aragon. Do you have Ms. Jones's email address to send to her? I think you might have muted her, Pam. Yeah. She has my. Oh, okay. So thank you, Ms. Aragon. Ruth Striegel? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes. If you would spell your name for the transcript.
Yes, my name is Ruth, R-U-T-H, Striegel, S-T-R-I-E-G-E-L.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ruth Striegel. I live in Albuquerque and serve as the co-chair of the board of directors of the New Mexico and El Paso chapter of Interfaith Power and Light, where we work on climate issues from a moral and ethical perspective. Having studied produced water and observed how the incredible amounts of this industrial waste are all over the landscape of southeast New Mexico, I am very concerned about the idea that produced water can be cleaned to a standard that would allow its use outside the oil field. Setting aside the problem of trade secret chemicals in this liquid, the amount of energy required to clean it up makes it totally impractical to say that we can clean large amounts of it. I'm quite alarmed by the idea that California is allowing a less toxic version of cleaned produced water to be used in agricultural settings, especially because so much of our produce comes from California. We cannot let this happen here in New Mexico. Please write the rule to include a clear prohibition on the discharge of both treated and untreated produced water to our ground and surface water. Keep it out of our ecosystem. The rule should not allow authorized use of produced water in industrial projects, which carry the risk of accidents, spills, or other unplanned discharges into public wastewater systems. We do not have sufficient evidence that this use is safe. I'm very concerned that such projects would further entrench the oil and gas industry at a time when we should be moving away from the use of fossil fuels as quickly as possible to limit the disastrous impacts of climate change. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Striegel. Eddie Holsgrove?
Hello, yes, that's me.
Terrific. Would you spell your names for the transcript?
Sure. Eddie is Eddie, and Pulsgrove is Paulsgrove.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
I'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to the commission for allowing time to receive comments. I'm a geologist. I have a degree from Tulsa University, and I retired from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. My experience was in geotechnical, environmental, hazardous, toxic, radiological waste, and I retired as a senior project manager administering and enforcing part of the Clean Water Act in the regulatory division. It's my opinion that New Mexico should start slow in this process and not be influenced by the economic threats kind of described this morning. Pilot or demonstration projects should be confined to the oil fields and go through the permitting process, including public notices. The rule is fatally flawed as proposed based on the fact that there isn't a permitting process including public notices. Rather, there's a notice of intent. That's unacceptable. There should be no discharge until we're satisfied with all results. All data derived should become publicly accessible. Only after the data is fully vetted should we consider the terms and conditions for surface discharge. Beneficial use of fully treated produced water could be a game changer, but that remains to be seen. Today's presenter talked about peer-reviewed papers he provided to the Commission, but those papers may not include peer-reviewed papers critical to the produced water treatment. We should attempt to get a 360-degree view of the issue. One issue of concern of mine is the final disposition of the produced water treatment waste stream. This hazardous material would be significant recurring quantities. As a retired Section 404 regulator, I'd recommend requiring the permits for individual projects and very closely monitoring data and on-site activities. There aren't second chances for mistakes. The quantity of unknowns and the clear danger these unknowns represent require us to apply the precautionary principle to the proposed processed water treatment pilot projects. We have to prevent exposure or an unauthorized release. There isn't coming back from that kind of a negative outcome. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pellsgrove. Okay, Alexis Martinez Johnson. I think we decided the mic on that side was superior. There, yeah. And if you may sit down, certainly, and just make sure it's green. And did you press the button? There you go. Spell your names for the transcript, please.
Me llamo Alexis Martinez Johnson. That's Alexis Martinez Johnson, Johnson.
Thank you.
Muchísimas
Hold
gracias.
on. Hold on. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
I'll start your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for your service to New Mexico. I am a generational New Mexican, and in my professional capacity, I worked in the environmental engineering sector. I graduated from New Mexico Tech, and I thank all the previous presenters for their very heartfelt comments. And we also need to do a reality check, and that is New Mexico is an energy powerhouse. We have over $6 billion in revenue that come in for paychecks, for our public education system, for the public safety here in Santa Fe, where I live with my 4 children. We are deeply committed to ensuring that our environment is safe for our children and that our water is clean. If the United States does not produce energy, there are serious geopolitical factors at stake, such as Iran, and Russia. You need to think very seriously about the decisions you're going to make here. The scientists and engineers can work with water molecules. We're working with water molecules. There's chloride attached to it. That's salt. We can remove that. We will later have an effluent stream. Now, that effluent stream is injected into the subsurface, and you're talking there will never be a time that it's going to ever migrate anywhere out of there. Currently, you have companies that are extracting lithium and other heavy metals from that effluent to use for our EV, our voltaic cells, such as we use for electric cars. Instead of getting those heavy metals from other countries, which have serious environmental issues, we could use that effluent to do that. There are other states that are doing this now. It is my opinion that you should be critical, be very critical with the data and ensure that these companies are meeting those regulations. But we also need to make sure that we are producing energy in the United States. It's not just for New Mexico. We hold the key for our global security. And I also want to say that we have to work together. We have to work with the community, our native community, and scientists are some of the activists. We need to come together instead of this side and this side. We all have to work and live in this environment. We need to be safe. We need to educate our children. And I would just plead with everybody to, don't you think it's time that we work together and do the best for our community, irrespective of you're on this side, I'm on that side? Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez Johnson. Lolly Hathorn. If you would spell your name for the transcript.
Okay, it's Lolly, last name Hathorn, 2 H's in the middle. Anyway,
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do,
Thank you. I'll start.
as much as I know. No, I'm just kidding. My opinion on this is that we all have problems with regulations. And somebody needs to be in charge of this, and whoever's in charge, I think my opinion would be they're the ones that are responsible for any errors that happen because they're obviously not doing their job or not doing it correctly. I have to say that the oil and gas industry puts a lot of money into a lot of communities. I see it going throughout the state, how much money is coming in. There are workers. If they are stopping any fracking, it's going to put a big, big hole in a lot of people's pockets. And I think that is very important. That's what keeps this country going. And, we need, like Alexis said, we need to work together and try to understand both sides of the coin. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. There's a little bit of blame to go all the way around. We can't all be perfect, except me. But no, I'm just kidding. But, we have to work together. That is the most important thing, and try to find a resolution and a solution for the issues. And I say keep on fracking. And if you don't like it, frack you. Thank you.
Tracy Major. If you would spell your name for the transcript.
Tracy, Tracy, Major, Major.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes,
I'll start your time.
I'm Tracy Major. I'm running for House District 20. I do understand the concerns from many people, especially the Native Americans on the reservations. But I also understand how much we depend on oil and gas. For our schools, they have given $13.9 billion Where are we going to get that if oil and gas goes away? It seems from the past, they have really cut down on freshwater use to 3%. What can oil and gas do to improve, I guess, views or make people happy? They've been proactive, it seems to me, but I'm asking to let oil and gas be part of the decision and don't exclude them. New Mexico relies on the revenue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Major. Erlene Gross Close? If you would spell your names for the transcript. I don't think your mic's on.
There we go. Earlene, last name Grossclose, Groseclose.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
I'll start your time.
I'm Erling Grossclose. I've been a citizen of New Mexico for 40 plus years. I'm a retired commissioned officer of the Public Health Service and an RN. I am a vivid outdoor person who enjoys exploring our forest and state lands for recreational purposes. I would like to thank the Commission for your roles in managing and protecting New Mexico's waters resources. Having lived in New Mexico for well over 40 years, I recognize water continues to be a precious commodity for New Mexicans as it has been for generations. As New Mexicans say, agua es vida, that is, water is life, which is no truer yesterday than it is today. We must conserve, protect, and manage this valuable and essential resource above all other resources of the state. Water conservation and proper management of water resources cannot be overemphasized, especially for the protection of public health. The availability of clean water over the centuries reduced waterborne illnesses like cholera, giardia, dysentery, and typhus fever, and improved public health. Conserving and protecting our fresh water supply at all times, especially during times of drought, cannot be stressed enough. It is imperative that the Commission look at all options available that allow for the conservation of fresh water supplies. Reuse opportunities to utilize produced water from oil and gas operations for the purpose of manufacturing and cooling industrial processes is an undeniable step forward to protecting and conserving quality fresh water for human consumption and agricultural food production. I encourage the Commission to support this produced water reuse initiative. In closing, I would like again to thank the Commission for your roles in managing and protecting New Mexico water's resources. My plea to each of you is that reuse of produced water in a safe and consciously applied manner is a critical measure to extend our fresh water supplies for the protection of public health. Failure to do so places an unreasonable demand on our precious freshwater supplies that can be reasonably and responsibly implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gross-Close. Would you provide your written statement to the court reporter?
Sure.
Thank you. Sherry, I'm having trouble reading the last name. Perhaps Morris or more?
Just press the.
If you would state and spell your name for the transcript.
My name is Sherry Morrison, Sherry, Morrison, Morrison.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. I'll start your time.
Yes, I am a resident of New Mexico. I've been here 22 years. And I'm a concerned citizen. I don't profess to know everything, and I respect
the commission, and I respect everyone that has spoken so far and with passion and knowledge. And I just want to reiterate that it's important that we all work together, because I think the people of New Mexico are very smart, intelligent people. And I think that we need to work together. Both sides have their good points and their bad points, but we have to work together to solve this problem. Water is going to be our most critical resource in the future, and we need to make sure that we can utilize water. And I've heard that water can be, the recycled water can go way, way down and will have no effect on any agriculture or anything like that. And I've heard the other side that it could affect our agriculture. But I think there's a way to compromise and do the best thing. And I think by talking to the geologists, the environmental engineers, everyone, to get their pros and cons so that an equitable solution can be found. I want to thank everyone, and I appreciate all the knowledge and study that has gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Linda Tiano. Okay. Joey Tiano. Alrighty. Jay Grosclose. Freddie Lopez. Oh, you're Jay? Okay, great.
Traffic jam there.
Okay. If you would spell your name for the transcript. Yes. No. Okay. If you already gave comment in May, we're just taking it once. I don't remember.
I have a couple of additional comments I would like to make.
So you have additional comments you'd like
Yes.
to make? That's fine. Could we accept them in writing, please?
You could.
Okay. They're given the same weight. And if you just give it to the court reporter,
Okay.
it'll be included in the record.
Let me provide those. Some of this is handwritten notes, and I haven't typed it up to submit it that way.
Okay, as long as you type it up by tomorrow, we'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Freddie Lopez. If you would spell your name for the record.
Freddie Lopez, FREDDIE LOPEZ.
And this is your first time commenting?
I do have additional comments, but I did speak back in May.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I feel like I repeat myself a lot, but maybe I don't say it often enough. We really have time just to accept verbal comments once from everyone. And if you have more to say, we'd love to have it, but we need it in writing.
All right.
So if you would just send an email.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. And it goes to Pam Jones.
All right.
Okay. Jeffrey Key or Kai? Okay. Is this your first time speaking? Great. Thank you. If you would spell your name for the transcript.
Yes, hello, my name is Jeffrey, Geoffrey. last name Kai, K-I-E.
Right? And do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Watitseopa, Inme Sotie Yakahanuksta Koikame. My name is Jeffrey Kai. I'm Bighorn Clan and Little Turquoise Clan from the Pueblo of Laguna, and that was my traditional introduction in Karis. I completed my master's in communication at Northern Arizona University. My thesis work focused on indigenous food sovereignty, topics such as seed rematriation, historical trade routes, as well as international communication. I am now with the communications team with Pueblo Action Alliance. I stand in opposition to the reuse of toxic oil and gas wastewater outside of the oil field. The strategic water supply plan that Governor Grisham announced is not a real solution, as it seeks to use contaminated water for agriculture, irrigation, potable water supplies, aquifer recharge, industrial processes, and environmental restoration. As stated in the proposed rule by the New Mexico Environmental Department, the new regulation being proposed, which is named Ground and Surface Water Protection Supplemental Requirements for Water Reuse, comes as a result of surplus amounts of wastewater from oil and gas fracking, which is the result of irresponsible practices from the industry and the state. For generations, our Native communities have been exposed to these extractive and experimental practices. Laguna Pueblo is home to one of the largest Superfund sites designated by the Environmental Protection Agency, and to this day has disrupted our water tables. Natural springs have been compromised. So we did entrust, energy companies, but that trust was squandered. Don't let this false solution be a decision that you regret in the future, just as our water tables in Laguna are still compromised. This plan does not address the first-in-time water rights that are historically with tribal nations. There is no new water. Energy barons come into our communities disguised in suits to try and convince us they are the experts. They are the ones who have disrupted our ancestral 5,000-year plan to build sustainable communities, restore aquifers, and honor traditional ecological knowledge. There is the consultation with tribal communities to address these water rights. The precedent in working with these tribes effectively referred to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which most countries in the United Nations have already agreed to. Honor tribal sovereignty by presenting this at village meetings, tribal councils, working with all Pueblo Council of Governors and Indigenous scholars who are from the stakeholder communities. This plan does not take into account the ecological impact of our endangered species, traditional medicines, and seasonal pilgrimages. I do not believe that the safety standard will not be met and will be treated with ignorance and non-compliance. A violation of our traditional water table disrupts our harvesting cycles, which are granted to us via the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, which protects the rights of Native Americans to exercise our traditional religions by ensuring access to sites, use and possession of sacred objects, and the freedom to worship through ceremonies and traditional rites. The Strategic Water Supply Plan is sacrilegious. Pueblo Action Alliance is born by defending water, and I will continue to speak until our water is protected. Wahime, thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheryl Lowry. Okay. Is there anyone else on the platform who has not yet offered comment, who would like to make comment during this session? The next public comment session is 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Please either raise your hand, reach out in chat, or otherwise contact Pam Jones. See anything, Pam? Okay. Is there anyone else in the room who has not yet offered public comment, sir? And then ma'am, come up to the microphone. You would please state and spell your name. You look familiar.
Good afternoon. My name's Rusty Rodkey, Rusty Rodkey. WQCC. And it's great seeing you again,
Nice to see you.
Madam Hearing Officer.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'll start your 3 minutes.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Professor Thompson, others that I've met. It's good to be here. I appreciate the work you do. I had a career in state government, 13 years with the Interstate Stream Commission as a civil engineer, 9 years at Environment Department. We had a hearing in the Rhino landfill with the eminent hearing officer Orth in presiding. Now I teach at the Santa Fe Community College. Okay. I teach now at the Santa Fe Community College. I teach water and wastewater classes. And, balancing public health versus public economic welfare, social welfare, is a balance that has been the basis of my career and probably many of yours. And from serving legislators and other public health and environment careers. And one man's trash is another man's treasure, is an old truism. Well, wastewater, is it a waste or is it a precious resource? The wastewater from oil and gas, if it can be used through regulations such as you're promulgating, I think that it shouldn't be just wasted. It needs to be used. And New Mexico is kind of like the Garden of Eden. You just have to add water. The green of all the river valleys testifies to that. And limiting the oil and gas industry is kind of like killing the goose that lays the golden egg. For example, New Mexico education is suffering and not educating the children according to the Constitution, according to the recent lawsuit. It's hurting enough without robbing it of its funding. So that's another consideration. The oil and gas money builds all kinds of drinking water systems around the state. So being concerned about drinking water is good, both in terms of these regulations and being able to provide competent potable water to everybody. Currently, there's some ongoing research by Dr. Aishan Ghost. He's a professional engineer and actually won the New Mexico Society of Professional Engineers Engineer of the Year Award. And he's an assistant professor at New Mexico Tech. He recently received $200,000 award grant for creating new fresh water from brackish and seawater.
Would you wrap up? I'm sorry.
Sure. And that was from the New Mexico University Team Pitch Award Pilot Program. The governor is very proud of. So I think if you have competent regulations, I think if everybody's held accountable like we tried to do when I was with the Environment Department, then I think that we shouldn't waste this water. We should use it.
Thank you very much. And you would state and spell your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Sofia Martinez. Sofia, Sofia, Martinez, Martinez.
Ms. Martinez, I believe you also testified.
No, I haven't testified.
You haven't?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth?
Yes, I do.
All right, I'll start your 3 minutes.
I'm COVID coordinator of Los Jardines Institute in Albuquerque and president of the Concerned Citizens of Wagon Mountain, Mora County. Yes, I tire of these hearings. Once again, I'm co-coordinator of Los Jardines Institute in Albuquerque and president of the Concerned Citizens of Wagon Mountain, Mora County. Los Jardines is also a member of the No Falls Solution Coalition. I speak today on behalf of those communities which I represent. Collectively, we have over 50 plus years of direct environmental justice work in New Mexico.
Ms.
Our
Martinez.
indigenous sisters and brothers. and
Ms.
land-
Martinez, please. Both the court reporter and the interpreters are trying to catch your every word. You must slow down.
Okay. Collectively, we have over 50 plus years of direct environmental justice work in New Mexico nationally and internationally. Our indigenous sisters and brothers and land-based communities have generations of environmental stewardship on this, their land. We stand in opposition to this rule, docket number WQCC 23-84R, for its many deficiencies, lack of sound scientific methodology, and legal protections. Although we have no problem with projects, pilot projects, and research, we know that faulty research has always been used to steal, sicken, and kill our communities and resources for a profit or to bail out industries, as this regulation also does. We are not newcomers to this land. We are intimately bound to it and know the damage to our communities and natural resources that we have suffered, the result of ongoing colonialization and industrial profit. Once again, we are asked to bear the cost and risks of pilot projects that will clean up the good water that the oil and gas industry has been allowed to poison. And now our tax dollars are used to attempt to clean this billions of gallons of fracked oil wastewater. With an impending climate crisis, we know that it is the fossil fuel industry, the oil and gas industry, that is the most culpable for the destruction that climate change is revealing to us with tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, floods, and climbing temperatures. And then, of course, there are the increasing earthquakes where fracking is used to produce even more and more profit for the oil industry. This is a bad regulation, and I'm sure it is supported very much by industry. We do not, the Permian Basin, which covers southeastern New Mexico, has made us the first in the last several years in terms of oil and gas production, second only to Texas. We don't want to be first in that, and we would like to be at least second in education, minimum wage, less homelessness, more mental and drug health support. Those are the things that we want to be second and first in.
Would you please wrap up?
The Water Quality Control Commission and the New Mexico Environment Department were set up to protect the resources of the people and the resources of New Mexico. We would like to see the New Mexico Environment Department promulgate rules and push hearings that talk about how we can keep our fresh water fresh rather than trying to clean it up after it's been poisoned. It is basically New Mexico, we can't seem to figure out how to rework our budget, our livelihood to get off the tit of the oil and gas industry and serve our people with a sustainable transition to renewable energy. We continue to be the neo-colony, the guinea pigs for what others do not want to experiment. We say no to fracking, nuclear, hydrogen, and produced water. And no, we will not water our farm produce with poisoned water. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I believe we've come to the end then of those on the platform or in the room who would like to offer comment in this session. The next session is 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. There'll be another session at 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Thank you all. We'll resume then the technical case. Let's see, we need Mr. McCurdy and Ms. Olson at the front table. We're going to resume questions by the commissioners and start with Commissioner Dominguez.
Someone may have left their notebook up here. This is not mine.
There's a notebook on the presentation table. We'll just remind everyone to keep it nice and slow. All right, Commissioner Dominguez.
Thank you, Madam Hearing Officer. Good afternoon, Mr. McCurdy. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you, sir.
I'll try to get us out of here before dark. So, want to kind of circle back and cover a little more of some information that you touched on during your SIR rebuttal testimony. So you've probably listened to quite a bit of the testimony, and you've probably heard comments about there's a gap in data out there, and probably some of the questioning coming from the commission. So with the current proposed rule, it's got places in there for bench scale projects, pilot projects, etc. And it appears part of that is to try to fill some of those data gaps. So if this rule is properly constructed and done correctly, will the rule help fill some of those data gaps regarding research and technology advancements? What's your perspective on that?
Yes, sir. I do believe that is the case. Hopefully, I kind of outlined in my testimony that I realized and acknowledged that we have had some data gaps in this in the past. The research is getting much better. There are alternatives to some of the research that allow us to get around some of these analytical techniques. And let me rephrase that, not to get around them, but figure out a way to make them be done accurately. And so what we see is we're seeing this data gap narrow as we're coming down. My personal opinion is we're getting very close to having full-scale knowledge of what this treated water looks like. My reason for testifying on behalf of NMOGA here is to encourage that we keep moving in that direction and not place a ban in place that would just basically stop the clock to a certain extent, because then essentially what we would have to do is look off to other states that are continuing to pursue this to bring data back into New Mexico. I think if the regulations are promulgated properly, that we can continue to do small scale pilot projects within the state and continue to build the data that the state needs.
Okay, and you actually beat me to my next question of if this rule stalls out or is done improperly, will it force the research and technology advancements to the east and to the north or elsewhere rather than New Mexico?
So and hopefully I respectfully conveyed earlier that I wasn't trying to be flippant, but obviously that would be the case. We've gotten an abundant number of what I call small scale closed loop pilots, meaning where we've run small scale distillation projects. We've gathered that distillate, concentrated brine, analyzed them, and then simply put them back together and put them down a disposal well so it stayed within the oil and gas industry. We're getting to the point now as we narrow that data gap down. Now we need to start looking at alternative uses for that distillate, but similar to what Texas is doing on a small scale. Let's go pick out a small scale of land, Let's monitor it accurately, apply a certain amount of this water, grab samples, make sure we're doing no harm to the environment whatsoever, and build that data along with the additional data associated with the water that we're seeing. So if we can't move forward in New Mexico because we put regulations in place that are going to put up a barrier to that, then obviously the research is going to start. Most likely for now will fall to Texas. Colorado is behind both Texas and New Mexico at the moment. Their problem now is they're still at a point where they're using a ton of fresh water in oil and gas. So the goal is to get them caught up with New Mexico and Texas on replacing fresh water with produced water in oil and gas operations.
Okay, let's switch gears. Talk a little bit about some of the land application side through the Texas Railroad Commission. So you referred to the letters of authorizations and that, you know, some of those have stalled, but there may be some actually moving forward for application to crops.
Yes, sir.
Are there restrictions within those letters of authorizations for type of crop that the reuse water is used on? I maybe say not to be used on edible crops. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, sir, there is. There's actually a hierarchy within the intended uses for a treated produced water. I've heard comments about drinking this water. That is at the very end of the scope that would ever be considered, because there are so many avenues in between to where this treated water would not directly affect a public or an individual. Ideally, at the very low end would be something along the line of irrigation of a non-consumable crop, such as cotton. Next up from that could be a consumable crop, a livestock consumable crop, such as alfalfa or something like that. Well, now we've got indirect exposure to humans if we're going to eat the cows that graze on the alfalfa. Moving along up from that would be discharge into the surface water stream or something like that, because while you have some sort of dilution effect, now you've also got exposure to fish and other things, possible downstream withdrawals from that waterway. So what we're trying to do is take a look at the opportunities for the time being that have a less chance of exposure to humans as we continue to build this database, but at the same time prove out the data. For example, can you irrigate a cotton crop with this water and get the kind of growth and improvement you would if you did with the same amount of fresh water? Prior to joining Select, so back prior to, well, now you're making fun of my accent. Prior to joining Select, so this would have been the spring of 2021. Any of y'all that have worked in the Carlsbad to Hobbs area or been in that area, if you'll remember, that area received an abundant amount of rainfall that spring. Literally like a 20-year rainfall cycle. I was in that area often because I was a partner with another guy on a company that was, and we were also right in the middle of COVID, which was wonderful. But we were working in that area, and it amazed me what that area looked like with that extra amount of rainfall. It was just totally unbelievable. Cattle in the area were as fat as I'd ever seen them in my life.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, that's all the questions I have. I'll yield the remainder of my time to Chair Thompson.
Thank you, Chair Thompson.
And I will take it. Good afternoon, Mr. McCurdy. Thank you for your testimony. Very helpful. One of the issues that has been raised is the problems with disposal of produce water, both in New Mexico and in Texas. And there are a number of midstream companies that have large pipelines that transport water across the state line. Do you have any idea whether the water is going north or going south, and how much?
It is predominantly going south. And I believe the current number that industry is looking at is roughly 2 million barrels a day of water is moving out of New Mexico into that North Culberson Reeves area for disposal within Texas.
Thank you. I was calculating about a fifth of that, just based on the size of the pipeline. Yeah, and to your knowledge, are there any regulations that prohibit that? Either regulations from New Mexico or from Texas?
So again, in transparency, the company that I work for, and again, I'm representing Nemoga here, but we have a pipeline network in Louisiana that brings Haynesville shale water from that play over there, because Louisiana also has geography that's not conducive to disposal. We bring that water into East Texas underneath the Sabine River for disposal over there. There was at one point considerable, as this seismicity picked up in that North Culberson Reeves area, there was concern that someone within Texas, maybe the Railroad Commission, could suspend that water from coming into the state. We don't bring a lot of water via pipeline down that way, but obviously, depending on how that was promulgated within Texas, would that also bar Louisiana water from coming into East Texas, which would be a huge concern. I spoke with an individual with the Railroad Commission, and since I don't have his permission to say his name, I won't say who, and asked specifically about that. I was told, Rick, I'm not going to tell you that there are not water cooler discussions in the commission about that. But what I will say is what we believe under current regulation is that the commission does not have the authority to make that happen. However, the legislature or executive order from the governor could do that. However, it is, to my knowledge, there's nothing underway to make that happen at present. And I'll amend that to say that doesn't mean that if we see seismic events pick up in the future, that couldn't be addressed.
My understanding is, well, no, let's talk about your understanding.
Okay.
Because I'm sure it's better than mine. There has been discussion in the Oil Conservation Division about limiting the maximum downhole pressures in saltwater disposal wells. Has that happened to date?
That discussion is underway. I will tell you that discussion is also underway within the state of Texas. They have a seismicity review committee that's hosted by the Railroad Commission. That is one of the outcomes of that, is the Railroad Commission is now reviewing, and let me back up a minute. Traditionally, we're associating, and please let me say that I am not a petrophysicist, so I'm not pretending to be an expert in that realm. But the data that we've seen so far says most of the induced seismicity is associated with deep well injection. So they are curtailing that injection, and a lot of it is being moved uphole to a shallower zone. In Texas, that's typically the San Andres zone. We're starting to see the San Andres pressure up in various areas, which is a problem for oil and gas operators, because to reach the common plays, the unconventional plays they're going after now, which are the various Wolfcamp shelves and Wolfberry benches, you have to drill through the San Andres. So now you're having to fight a pressure as you're going down. You typically want to set an additional casing string that you would not have had before, because you want to protect your production pipe from all that water that's being injected in that zone. So in turn, what the commission is doing is taking a look at known disposal pressures in a given area, and then they will come in and look and generally permit a new disposal well based on two criteria. And one is disposal volumes, and it could be 30,000, 20,000, or 10,000 barrels a day. And then historically, what the commission has done is said you get 0.5 PSI per foot as a surface injection pressure based on the depth of your well. So if your well zone, your targeted zone was 4,000 foot deep, you would be allowed 2,000 PSI of injection pressure on surface. What they're doing now is based on known zone pressures in those disposal zones. that can be reduced to 0.25 or possibly less. The concern there from an industry standpoint is if you ask for a saltwater disposal well permit and they come back and permit you for 10,000 barrels a day at 0.25, it's not worth the investment to drill that well.
So that 0.5 PSI per foot.
That was the traditional. And they still are allowing that in some areas, but now they're starting to really look at it and scrutinize it and see if they need to drop that down.
In Texas.
Yes, sir.
And in New Mexico?
They are also looking at pressures. There is a lot of talk underway now that they're also seeing pressure in some of the shallower zones here.
And so if New Mexico did restrict the subsurface injection pressure, they cut it in half from 0.5 to 0.25. What would that do to the industry? First of all, what would it do to the volumes of produced water that could be disposed of in saltwater disposal wells? And then as a result, what would that do to the oil production in the state of New Mexico?
So without going into calculations and figuring out what that exact number is, please allow me to say that the allowed or the available disposal would fall off. So that leaves an operator with two options. You either find another well somewhere else that you can move that water to. And in this case, it would likely be by truck because it would be a decision that would have to be made overnight. So there's not going to be a time to put infrastructure in place. So now you have to truck that water. And so depending on how far you truck it, you may be faced with a traditional 50 or 60 cent a barrel disposal fee, including transportation. And now you may be looking at $3 or $4 a barrel, depending on how far you have to truck that water to get rid of it. That puts an additional expense on the well, also puts additional wear and tear on the roadways in New Mexico, as well as putting more trucks on the road. They're going to hinder the public. The other option is to shut in the well. We shut in the well, we lose that production until such a time when we can find a way to get rid of the water. I think typically, the overall average in the Delaware Basin is 7 barrels of water now for every 1 barrel of oil. So if we cut out 7,000 barrels of water, we cut out 1,000 barrels of oil production. And when you look at it from that standpoint, then that water becomes very valuable on how to get rid of it.
The disposal option becomes valuable.
Yes, sir.
Not the water.
Yes. Well, we have to find something to do with that water or else we lose the revenue. We lose the revenue and the state loses their share of the revenue. And you'll have to forgive me. My company does not make any revenue off oil and gas wells, nor does not make any revenue off oil and gas wells, nor do I. Unfortunately, having been with the operator, having worked for an operator for 11 years, I tend to fall back into that role sometimes by accident.
So the concluding comment, without running the numbers, is if we further constrain the ability to dispose of produced water in saltwater disposal wells, it would have a significant or an insignificant impact on oil production in New Mexico.
My opinion, it would have a significant impact because we are dealing with a balance of water today issue, right? That we constantly have to move that water. I mentioned the 2 million barrels of water a day moving into Texas. If there was some scenario where that was to be cut off overnight, there's literally nothing that would be done immediately, but have to shut in that production until an alternative could be found. That would be a significant impact to oil production in the northern Delaware Basin.
And please understand, I am a pretty committed environmentalist. I'm not I don't want to protect the oil and gas industry, but I recognize that revenue from the industry provides something like 1/3 of the support for the state budget in New Mexico. And if we cut that revenue, we would have to either cut expenses or raise taxes to make up the difference. And I think that's an important point. Let's talk about some other things. We've had multiple comments throughout these hearings that there are no studies demonstrating the ability to treat produced water to very high quality. One exception was Mr. Hightower talked about the work done by the Produced Water Research Consortium, but that was, he mentioned just a few studies. I don't remember, there were less than 10 studies, I think. And most of them have not been completed to date, and we don't have data from them. Your testimony, you've provided a large number of references. These were NMOGA exhibits 75 to 127.
Yes, sir.
So that's 52 references. Can you just briefly summarize what is described in those 52 references?
Yes, sir. So it depends on your definition of very high quality water. Okay. Generally speaking, US EPA, most areas consider fresh water to be 1,000 milligrams per liter TDS or less, right? And fluorides will be no greater than 250 or 500 milligrams per liter. If you will look at a lot of those studies where they have done and graded, a lot of it's laboratory evaluation work and things of that nature, they've treated that produced water and easily gotten it. They have results in those studies down below 1,000 milligrams per liter. Now, I will admit, before somebody asked me about it, did they run the extensive list of analysis such as the New Mexico Consortium has developed and referred to as their MPDES plus list? No. That's not. You will typically look at those papers and they will cover maybe 20 or 30 different parameters in water that they looked at. But they're demonstrating how there's several of those papers will talk about organics and how they got particularly BTEX down from detectable levels to below detectable levels. So they're able to remove those organics out of the water. A lot of the inorganic salts and metals have been removed out of the water. So to say that there isn't existing peer-reviewed paperwork and peer-reviewed studies that demonstrate, there are. Now, you can say, well, but there are none out there that reflect 400 constituents. I agree with that. Because just in the recent 2 years, mainly through the work at New Mexico Research Consortium, have they developed that list of here's things that we're concerned with and want to make sure that it's not in this water. But there are studies out there reflecting the ability to take a hypersaline produced water and get it down below a maximum level that would be considered for fresh water.
And of these 52 studies, very few of them were done in Mexico State. They were done by other organizations.
Yes, sir. Several of them were U.S. universities. If you will take a look at it, there were some of them done in Italy. There were some of them done in Norway. Some of them were done, I think, a couple in France. So this has been a worldwide issue to take a look at anywhere there's produced water and technology. So it could be a situation to where a membrane distillation manufacturer in the Netherlands published a paper, but they may have used samples of produced water from the U.S. to run through their bench scale testing. So the paper would have been published in the Netherlands, even though it reflected U.S. water.
And there's been testimony about the merits of having peer-reviewed work. Are these 52 references that you provided us with, 52 exhibits? All but a couple of them, I think,
yes,
were published in peer-reviewed journals. Is that not true?
Yes, I would say anyone that's listed as a paper with various corresponding authors, those are all peer-reviewed papers. The ones I would say are not is there's a couple even though they're voluminous, They are white papers, such as the work put out by GWPC, the Groundwater Protection Council, GWPC. You're welcome.
Okay, so I think based on your testimony and the exhibits you provided, it's safe to say that there is a lot of high quality, peer reviewed, published research on treatment of produced water.
In my opinion, there is. And as I mentioned this morning, there are more papers out there than that. I've just pulled in some papers that I was somewhat familiar with and had looked at before, and went out and found those to make them available for this hearing.
Let's change gears a little bit. The regulation that's been proposed talks about bench scale, pilot scale projects. Bench scale, I think we all agree, is something that's done in a laboratory.
Yes, sir.
There was testimony provided a couple days ago that pilot scale is not very well defined. Can you give me quantity in terms of barrels per day or gallons per minute or something like that of what you would consider to be the upper limit pilot scale? So that would be the distinction between a pilot scale plant and a demonstration scale plant.
So that's a very good comment you make there, because you are right. There is a wide range of pilot scales being proposed today. The smaller end of that, I would argue, is more of a demonstration plant. Demonstration plant meaning, in my definition, you've taken a bench scale test and you've upsized it to demonstrate how it could work in a real world environment. In my mind, a pilot scale plant is one that is large enough quantity that now you're confident that you could go from that into full scale production at roughly the same economic scale on a linear basis. Demonstration scale plants are typically somewhere in the neighborhood of just say 20, would produce 20 barrels of fresh water a day.
20?
20.
That's a demonstration scale?
Yep.
That's very small.
And the
800
pilot scale
gallons.
would be 500 to 1,000 barrels per day.
Okay. I think I misunderstand.
Okay.
I think of a demonstration scale as something approaching full scale that demonstrates feasibility, whereas a pilot scale.
Then in that case, then I would reverse how I'm explaining it on my end. In that case, a pilot scale would be the lower end, and the demonstration scale, yeah, I'll go with your language. The demonstration scale would say, this is of a size that we are now confident that we can step up to a full-blown treatment system. So a 500 to 1,000 barrel a day could be upsized to a 10,000 to 20,000 barrel a day system, and you would have a high confidence in being able to do that. Demonstration scale would say, pilot scale would say, we took this lab bench work unit and we built a larger version of it and took it into the real world environment.
In your opinion, if we, the Water Quality Control Commission, modified the rule to put in a definition pilot scale, would the industry support that?
I believe we would. We'd have to see what that, to be honest, we'd have to see what that definition is. But again, as long as it was a option to where we can keep moving this research forward within the state of New Mexico, I think that would be favorable to the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association.
Thank you. Another line of questioning. Yesterday, we had presentation by Dr. Vengosh from Duke University. Very well-respected man who's done, he's a chemist though, not a treatment person. And he argued very strongly in favor of third-party validation pilot testing. Are you familiar with any other type of testing that would involve third-party validation? Now, I'm not talking about simply reporting the data to regulatory agency, but rather where there is actually someone that independent third party is participating in the design, operation, and evaluation of a technology.
So one thing I'd like to state up front, even though I have known Dr. Vengosh now for probably 15 years, I've been on various panels with Avner. We have presented to the EPA in different areas. I've been aware of for years the work he and his students have done at the Nicholas School for the Environment at Duke University. I consider him well respected by me. Their work, by and large, generally has been anti oil and gas, but they do good work and they do a lot of effort into it, and I respect the work that they do. One thing I would like to say, and I've been in this industry for 44 years. By and large, I understand that the public does not trust industry to monitor itself and say this is how good we're doing. I understand that, and I understand the need for third-party evaluation. One of the reasons would be as we're moving forward, and this would even be perhaps we're further years down the road and we've shown this to be safe and doable, you're still going to need periodically, we need an analysis that go through an accredited lab that has a chain of custody associated with it to show that the sampling techniques met the requirements, hold times met the requirements, the samples were prepared properly before they were submitted to this accredited lab, and then that lab presents the data based on those samples. That's one third party. Another third party can be an engineering firm, and we use that. We use engineering firms to help design this equipment. We can always have a third party engineering firm look at that and say, we agree with this design and we agree with the safeguards that are in place and how it tends to be where they're putting in sample locations and stuff like that. And then in addition to that, like I commented this morning, it's perfectly acceptable for regulators to say, we're going to have a process to where we periodically can come in and inspect your operation.
Okay, so you've presented three options. One involves the sampling analysis, presumably of the final product water.
Yes, sir.
Now, it would require sampling and analysis and the intermediate processes within the pilot plant itself.
The comments that I've made publicly for years is I'm not trying to diminish the constituents that are in raw produced water, but we need to focus 10% of our effort on looking at that and 90% of our effort on looking at that highly treated water, because that's the water that would be going into the environment.
And presumably also looking at the residual streams, analysis of the residual streams, because that's going to affect the ability to manage it.
Yes, and I've heard that mentioned several times today, and not diverting away from your question. Industry is doing the things that we're looking at is ways to do this without generating waste streams. Historically, when you looked at saltwater distillation, you would typically, in the older times, it was very common to pull all the divalent cations out of that water prior to distilling it. You would take those out, run them through drop them out, precipitate them out, run them through a filter press, and then transport that off to an environmental landfill. Processes we're looking at today leave those in solution and keep them in the concentrated brine. That concentrated brine will continue to go down a class 2 disposal well.
Okay, so that's doing the third party sampling and analysis would be acceptable to the industry?
Yes, sir.
And hiring independent organization, an engineering firm or a university or a research institute to look at the design and performance, would you would the industry accept third-party involvement in the initial design of the experimental program, including the design of the equipment?
Let me say,
upfront participation is what I'm talking about.
yes, provided, and I think we could get around the issues with proprietary information, right? As long as we could guard that, then I don't think industry would be opposed to that.
That's exactly what I was going towards. Thank you very much. Okay. Two more questions. Let's talk just a little bit about cost. There's written testimony that has been submitted, and I have no idea who submitted it, but they're talking about cost of disposing produced water in a saltwater disposal well ranges from $1 a barrel to $100 a barrel. Is that true?
Personally, well, first of all, there's not a well out there. Unless you have a well producing 1,000 barrels of oil a day and 1 barrel of water, no one's going to pay $100 a barrel to dispose of that water. I'm personally not aware of any situation, particularly in New Mexico, where someone is paying $100 a barrel. The highest I've ever heard in my career within the U.S. was in northeastern PA, when at the onset of the Marcellus play up there, with no disposal infrastructure in place, we would take produced water and truck it to eastern Ohio for disposal. That on average ran $15 to $22 a barrel to dispose of that water.
Including trucking?
Yes, sir. I would say here in New Mexico, a better value would be somewhere between 60 cents a barrel, and that would be for water that is strictly on pipe and does not see a truck, up to perhaps $4 or $5 a barrel, for particularly like up in areas, say in the San Juan Basin, where it's more of a hilly terrain and truck times are longer to get water to a disposal.
You can't use pipes. Okay, one last line of questions. What is the market price for hydrogen?
So right now, well, the market price is a good question. I know more about what the cost to currently produce hydrogen is, which is typically somewhere in the $5 to $7 a barrel range.
Barrel?
Did I say a barrel? Kilogram. Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, I have a brain that's focused on water. I mentioned I think current usage was something like 10 metric tons or 10 million metric tons per year in the U.S. It's focused predominantly on the West Coast, up in the Northeast, up in upper New York, primarily upper in New York, because they can pull out of the whichever river it is where Niagara Falls is, abundant amount of water. California, because we're going to be green, even though they don't have the water for it as well. And then, so currently for hydrogen production now in California, I believe they do have 4 hydrogen fueling stations for fuel cell vehicles out there. That's why they produce a little bit, generally in the greater Los Angeles area. Most of the rest of the hydrogen within the U.S. is consumed at refineries and also consumed in the steel manufacturing process. So that's the little that we typically use. The concept now, and what the current administration would love to see, is to see us move particularly away from diesel trucks to trucks fueled by hydrogen internal combustion engines or hydrogen fuel cells, and build a strong pipeline network across the U.S. to move this hydrogen to where we could use it as a transportation fuel. That would have to be an infrastructure build out, because existing pipelines cannot transport hydrogen.
So if I use following up on if it's $5 to $7 per kilogram, that's fine. What's the projected cost of treating produced water to the ultra pure water quality that would be required for green hydrogen production?
So my guess right now is, assuming we could treat the front end at somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 to $1.50 a barrel, we would likely double to triple that cost to get it to an ultra pure status. Currently, that's not being done anywhere, so I can't put a finite number on it. I can say this, in a previous portion of my career, I was a region technical manager for a service company. The corporate lab was under my purview. We built our own standards for our instrumentation, and we started out building those standards using ultra pure water. This was 2 decades ago, and I bought a ultra pure purification system that would produce 2 liters per day of ultra pure water, and it cost me $15,000 back then.
Yeah, I don't think they're that expensive and to produce ultra pure water in a laboratory, but it's expensive.
Yep.
So the primary treatment of produce water, you're expecting something on the order of $1 per barrel. And that would take it to what level of salinity?
So that would take it to a level of salinity less than probably 500 milligrams per liter. A salinity typical of what we see is a reverse osmosis permeate now, an RO permeate. So as I had shown in my little diagram, that's where we're at now, that the front end of a hydrogen electrolysis facility or green hydrogen would typically be RO. For produced water, we pull that out because typically our produced water is too high TDS for an RO process, and we would put some other thermal process in there.
Okay, thank you. And you just touched on something that I wanted to bring up to the public. Can you treat produced water, Permian Basin produced water, with reverse osmosis?
By and large, no. There are a few zones within the Permian Basin that can. Generally speaking, standard brackish water RO, seawater RO, they're very efficient up to about a raw water of 50,000 milligrams per liter. And after that, they fall off. They can't go much higher than that. I will say there are several companies today, and a couple of them are involved in pilot projects in the Permian that are working with what is referred to as either a cross-flow RO or a counterflow RO. These systems are multi-staged and they're somewhat backwards. You bring a high salinity salt water in on this stage, and it gives, say it comes in at 150, it gives you a permeate that's 70,000 and a concentrate that's higher. That 70,000 moves backwards in the stage to another system. Now it gives you a permeate that's 15 or 20,000 and a concentrate that goes back to this stage. This permeate comes back over here, and now all of a sudden we get a fresh water out of that RO system. They're in the scale up process now to where they determine what economies are going to come out of this. RO on large scale, one of the biggest expense there, number one, is the membranes, particularly if you foul them. And the second thing is energy demand, because you're constantly pushing water against these filters at 1,000 PSI.
Oh, I think the osmotic pressures are much higher than that.
You are correct. That's on some of the lower end. Some of the higher ones are pushing up in the neighborhood. You have to be higher than that because we're looking at 700 to 800 bar.
Thank you, Mr. McCurdy. Those are all my questions.
All right, thank you. We need a break. Let's take 15 minutes, return at 3, and we'll get questions from this side of the table.